I will start my introduction. We've got quite a number of people online now. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a special welcome from me as chairman of the British-Kazakh Society. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this important BKS webinar on Kazakhstan's justice system. We're particularly honoured to have the Minister of Justice here this morning, and welcome to you, sir. As you all know, the British-Kazakh Society aims to promote the best of relations between Britain and Kazakhstan, including highlighting trade and investment opportunities and promoting cooperation between government, industry and finance. So we really act as a conduit between the two countries. And we also promote international affairs and diplomatic issues. So this webinar on justice is absolutely firmly within our remit. This year, as you all know, is a very important one for Kazakhstan, marking the 30th anniversary of independence. The transformation of the country has really been extraordinary over these last 30 years, and the judicial system has also undergone significant change and modernization. The judicial relationship between our two countries is extremely strong, and this is supported by our distinguished speakers today, who all have special insight into the trends, mechanisms, and outcomes of the justice system. They will speak in turn and have kindly agreed to answer questions at the end. So we have three keynote speakers. Our first is His Excellency Erlan Idrissov. As you all know, he is the distinguished ambassador for Kazakhstan. He's served twice as foreign minister and has been a very strong advocate for Kazakhstan on the world stage. He will introduce our keynote speaker, Kazakhstan's Justice Minister, shortly. The Justice Minister, Mr. Beketayev, has very high-level experience, including as advisor to the Prime Minister. He was Vice Minister of Justice between 2007 and 2010, and was Executive Secretary at the Ministry between 2010 and 2015. He's also been Deputy Head of the Presidential Administration. He was appointed Minister of Justice in 2016, and I'm delighted to say that he is a graduate of the London School of Economics here in the UK. Thirdly, we have Mark Beer, who is co-founder of Seven Pillars Law. He has wide experience of international law and was appointed to the International Council of the Supreme Court of Kazakhstan in 2016. He's played an active role in the development of the Supreme Court and the AIFC. So welcome to you all, and it gives me great pleasure to pass over to His Excellency Erlan Idrissov to introduce proceedings. Thank you, Erlan.
Rupert, thank you very much for your kind introduction and kind words. Welcome to everyone. I can see that we have a very powerful panel, and we also have quite a lot of attendees who are keen to learn what we'll be talking today about. I'm thankful to the British-Kazakh Society. This is our third webinar under the aegis Kazakhstan at 30. Two first webinars we have made to recollect our thoughts and memories about how Kazakhstan was coming into being, about the foundations laid down for the domestic policy, for the foreign policy. Then we covered a very interesting aspect of the growth of Kazakhstan, the financial sector, with Governor Marchenko giving us the memories of how different elements of the financial system were brought together. And today we come to a very important topic, which no nation can avoid in nation building. Legal system, legal framework, justice, judiciary, these are the most important element of any nation in today's world, and in any society historically, deep into the history. Therefore, starting to build a young nation, of course, the leaders of Kazakhstan were absolutely keen to understand what should be done to make sure that Kazakhstan has a very sound, reliable, professional, forward-looking legal system. Of course, we all understand that Kazakhstan became independent, and of course, it has inherited a very heavy, cumbersome, ugly judicial system from the Soviet past. Many elements of that system, of course, couldn't work. There was a separate, specific understanding of the rule of law in the Soviet legal system, but President Nazarbayev and his team, they were dedicated to bring a new culture of rule of law, a new culture of understanding the rule of law on the territory of Kazakhstan, on a par with the market reform, economic reforms, on a par with democratic, political, liberal political reforms. That was the task, to bring the new culture, the new spirit of the rule of law into Kazakhstan, and he gathered and put together a very strong legal team of professionals, and Marat Beketayev comes into this team in the very active and very interesting moment of its shaping. As Rupert, you said, he is the graduate of the London School of Economics, and this tells you the criteria for President Nazarbayev to pick up members to his team. He wanted to rely on well-educated, differently motivated, with broader vision young people, cosmopolitans in their nature, well-educated to bring Kazakhstan to the heights of new standards of the legal system, which were fitting to global standards. Therefore, I think, I know, of course, Marat Beketayev quite well. For many, many years, in his different growing capacities, you have enumerated different positions he has been holding. I know Marat, knew Marat from all these positions, and I knew him always from the best side of his professionalism, of his personal qualities. I can tell you that Marat personally has contributed to many aspects of very sophisticated legal reforms in Kazakhstan. As you, of course, understand, as I said, we have inherited a cumbersome legal system from the Soviet Union. When we became independent, we cannot say that we didn't have anyone in the legal profession. We had lots of people in the legal profession, but they were all with that Soviet legal mindset. And you had to reshape and restructure everything, not from scratch. It was a difficult task to retrain the ones who had the Soviet legal mentality and to train the new generation of legal professionals in Kazakhstan. That was the task many people in the legal system were involved in, and Marat was one of them who started to be engaged in this huge nationwide state-building effort almost from the very beginning. And I can assure you, I know this personally, that he personally had contributed to, for example, the reform of the penal system in Kazakhstan. Many don't know, but Kazakhstan, as I said, we inherited one of the ugly parts of the Soviet legal system, including the penal part. For example, many parts of the Stalin Gulag system were present in Kazakhstan, and our penal system was having a very strong imprint of the Soviet Stalin-built suppression machine. So we had to rebuild that. In early days of our independence, Kazakhstan was ranked number 3 in the world in terms of the size of the prison population. This is an absolutely ugly figure for a small, less low populated country like Kazakhstan. Number 3 in the world with the prison population. And with the efforts of in the penal reform, including with the efforts of Minister Beketayev, Kazakhstan, as of 2019, is ranking almost 100. So we went down drastically on the list of this important aspect. Marat was very instrumental in creating the national prevention mechanism against torture, for example. He was the one who worked very hard to bring the culture of advocacy practices and legal assistance in Kazakhstan, a system of private bailiffs, for example, And I would like to highlight here that he, with his heart and dedication and his position, he defended the concept of having two legal systems on the territory of one country, Kazakhstan. And he was one of the strong supporters and advocates for bringing the English common law to the territory of the Astana International Financial Center. Therefore, I'm very proud that we have my good friend, a very strong representative, very bright representative of the young technocratic cosmopolitan generation of Kazakh leaders today with us on this webinar, which is arranged by the British-Kazakh Society. I'm sure that we will have a very interesting discussion. We have two professionals, Marat Beketayev and Mark Beer. Mark Beer was also in Kazakhstan for many years and knows so many people in the legal system. Therefore, I think we have a wonderful panel to better understand what it took us to build a modern legal system in Kazakhstan, which is not yet perfect, which needs further reform and further perfection into the future, but we have done major steps in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Erlan, thank you very much indeed. And Minister, the floor is yours.
Erlan Abelfaizovich, I'm really sorry.
Mr. Idrissov.
With the sound, I didn't hear.
Oh, you didn't hear my words. Okay, I'll call you and tell you.
I've heard your introductory words, but after you given the floor the second time, the sound disappeared.
I'm sorry. But believe me, I told you that you have contributed a lot into the...
I've heard that part. That part was okay.
Yeah,
but after that...
It was all good. It was all positive.
After that, it was all good too.
Minister, the floor is yours now. So we look forward to your speech.
Thank you. Good morning again to everyone, and good afternoon who is in Kazakhstan. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was thinking, how should I give an overview of the Kazakh legal system and about reforms, judicial reforms and legal reforms in Kazakhstan. And it's really challenging to give an overview within such a short period of time. Suppose we were planning to do it within 1 hour, 1.5 hours. That's almost impossible. And then I thought, if I were to stop on key elements, then probably I would be repeating many speakers who made similar speeches and made similar presentations over the last several years. And I thought maybe it will be better to give a feeling what is happening at the moment. But the challenge is that I will be giving you information about only reforms which are done within the Ministry of Justice. And I hope that in understanding what is happening in the Ministry of Justice, you will get an understanding what is happening generally in legal system in Kazakhstan. And I want to achieve that by explaining the concept of quick reforms and structural reforms. At the beginning of our independence, it was, of course, challenging and difficult to start legal reforms. But when they were done, we kind of were gathering low-hanging fruits, and we achieved quick results. But now we're struggling, and I repeat, we're struggling with difficult, sophisticated, complex structural reforms. This is, I would say, more challenging because every reform requires change in the culture. And it was really good that the general trend, which was set by our first president, was right. And that was combination of strong and strong political will and also vision that every reform requires resources. You cannot do reform without people, without budget. Relevant funding should be available, and people who understand what should be done should be available. And that brings me to the work which is currently done by Ministry of Justice. And I've prepared a small presentation, and that is here. I hope everyone sees this.
Yeah, we can see that.
And this is the beginning. And the first slide would be about arbitration and court cases brought against Kazakhstan. Currently, we have 14 arbitration disputes and 8 court claims brought against Kazakhstan, and the total amount is 10.5 billion. From the beginning of independence of Kazakhstan, there were 29 cases which are completed. The country was able to defend 18.7 billion, and unfortunately, there were decisions against Kazakhstan, and there was a situation when it was better for Kazakhstan to settle. Sometimes Kazakhstan is criticized that we never pay, we do not honor our obligations. This is simply not true. All in all, Kazakhstan paid $280 million as compensation to investors. And in the second part of the slide, I decided to show the number of cases over the years. And you see that up to until 2018, this number was growing, and now it's slowly going down. And my understanding of the reasons why this figure was growing and not why it is going down, and I'm pretty sure that this trend is quite stable trend for the following reasons. In the 90s, when legal system of Kazakhstan was not mature, was not developed, state bodies were not prepared to deal with challenges of the global world and globalization. Investors from abroad were coming to Kazakhstan, but they were not always good investors. And there were a number of situations when mistakes were made, when decisions not favorable for investors were made, and generally the system itself was not able to resolve all the problems internally. And because of that, starting from 2000, number of claims were brought against Kazakhstan. And we started to gather experience how to deal with such situations. What was at the origins of a particular conflict situation. And while we were gathering such experience, we were able, in parallel, improve our mechanisms, legal mechanisms, improve our legislation, not to deal with the consequences of the particular conflict situation, but to prevent conflict situations. With the time, this work started to pay off, and now we are observing decline in number of cases. In addition to improvements in the legislation, the state was able to gather experience how to deal with such investment disputes. I could say that the current situation is quite promising. We have enough resources, we have experienced people, we have good consultants, and we have available funding to deal with such investment disputes. But what is a problem for Kazakhstan, and probably this is a problem for all the developing countries, that is the concept or trend in the global arbitration market called third-party funding. And I personally believe that this is not good for arbitration and for investment climate generally. Because many countries, many developing countries, are not able to fight investment disputes, to deal with investment disputes, because they experience lack of resources. Not because they were not right in particular situation, not because they discriminated investors or unlawfully terminated contracts, but simply because they are not able to hire consultants, and maybe they lack experience. And third-party funding available only to investors, and such investors not always good investors. And we've seen number of cases when investors turned out to be fraudsters. And that is not only experience of Kazakhstan. We've seen a number of cases against Indonesia, against Nigeria. And if we were to talk generally about work of the Ministry of Justice of Kazakhstan, I personally think that it is our job to show to outside world that we are a country with good legislation, which is prepared to deal with conflict situations internally. We have created Aifc, we have created Arbitration Center in Aifc and the court of Aifc. And also we have capacity to deal with investment disputes properly. Let me move to my next slide. This is the work of private court bailiffs. As you know, up until 2011, there were only state court bailiffs. And after the reform in 2011 and further boost of this reform in 2015, number of private court bailiffs was growing, and now you see all the numbers for yourself on this slide. What we're trying to do at the moment, we're trying to develop self-regulation of of private court bailiffs. That is ethical standards, training, and most importantly, I believe, electronic system for private court bailiffs. Electronic system allows all the clients of this market to see for themselves what is happening with their court decision, and that is helping to resolve many problems. Instead of going and filing complaints with the Ministry of Justice, people are able to see and to use electronic system to get information, and also they are able to go to self-regulating body of private court bailiffs to file complaints with them and to resolve problems if they happen. Also, as you see, we've introduced unified professional training programs. We've introduced a rating system which helps people to choose their court bailiffs. In the past, this information was not available to our people. Now it is good and reliable. What is important in this rating system, and we insisted as a Ministry of Justice that this system would rely on objective criteria. The criteria which could not be manipulated by the system or by the court bailiff. That is about number of cases they are dealing with, number of complaints filed against particular court bailiff, and most importantly, effectiveness. How much money they were able to get from the data and deliver this money to the creditor. And this system allows to do it without going around, without visiting any court bailiffs. Everything is done online. In order to provide transparency and trust for Chamber of Private Court bailiffs, we've had number of discussions with them. Then I talked to group Big Four, that is PwC, Dentons, no, sorry, Deloitte, KPMG, and Ernst & Young. When I was talking to them, I said, look, we have an idea that this self-regulating body should provide monthly reports, financial reports about their activities. And you, Big Four, could be helping us to do our legal reform. This is your opportunity. Give this body a good discount. And the best offer came from PwC. What is interesting that Chamber of Private Court bailiffs had 5 accountants before hiring PwC. And the salary of these 5 accountants turned out to be a bigger amount in comparison to the payments to PwC for their services. Now, if you go to website of Chamber of Private Court Bailiffs, you could see monthly reports about their financial activities. And that has improved the collection of monthly fees from private court bailiffs. This is just to give you flavor. In the past, we had only state private court bailiffs, very ineffective. The workload was high for them. And if I remember correctly, the situation was such that every state court bailiff had to deal with one particular court decision. The time for one particular court decision was half an hour. You cannot do a proper job within half an hour. If you divide all the court decisions by number of court bailiffs, the timing was 30 minutes per court decision. Now we have much better situation, and introduction of a new IT system helped. Move from state to private court bailiffs system also helped. Let me move to next slide, which is intellectual property rights. Patent Office of Kazakhstan is under the Ministry of Justice. And I thought it is important for me to talk about IP rights, because as a country, we don't need investments only. I would say Kazakhstan has money to fund the economy. What we need technology, we need that investors are coming to Kazakhstan with IP rights. And we could achieve that by providing comfort to all the investors. And to do that, we need to do that by the standards which are global. And also, it is important to do this in English language. And as you see that our National Patent Office provides services of registration of number of IP documents, which are mentioned here. It is also possible to apply for registration to Eurasian Patent Office situated in Moscow. That is done through our National Patent Office. And also, our Patent Office provides services for sending applications to World International Intellectual Property Organization situated in Geneva. It's quite, our Patent Office is quite developed one. We have sophisticated IT systems. 95% of applications are received online. We use artificial intelligence to do preliminary examination. We issue documents in digital format with a QR code. And all the registered rights could be confirmed through our website. Out of 200 people working for National Patent Office, 56 speak English and completed internship programs abroad, and 17 are Western educated. I thought that this information would be interesting for UK participants. Companies from the UK actually applied for documents, IP documents in Kazakhstan, and here are a number of examples. British American Tobacco registered 201 trademark. Gallagher, 186. And also there were a number of applications registered for patents and inventions. It is also under the umbrella of our patent office. That project was initiated by Sir Richard Evans when he was a member of the board of Samruk-Kazana National Fund. And the idea was coming from his experience in British aerospace. I remember he was telling that when he was head of British aerospace, there was lack of talented aviation engineers. And to boost this number, they first tried to compete for students, and then they realized that students already gone to become lawyers and accountants. That was happening when London financial center was growing. And they understood that in order to compete for talent, they need to go to schools. And they made such a project in UK. And he suggested to repeat this experience in Kazakhstan, and that was done in cooperation with Patent Office. It was first started by Samruk-Kazana, Air Astana, and National Patent Office. There was a competition held in Kazakhstan, and winners of this competition, group of 40 school children with their teachers, went to Cranfield University for 1 week study tour. And you see these nice pictures. That was organized 3 years in a row. Unfortunately, last year, because of the pandemic, we stopped this project. And we hope when the pandemic is over, we will start it again. And I was always asked what this project has to do with Patent Office. And the answer was simple. This is the best way to promote general understanding that you not only need to make an invention, you have to secure your IP rights for this invention. And this is the best way to do it. Let me talk about forensic services. Again, sophisticated, very sophisticated area of legal reform. And these services are provided by the organization under the Ministry of Justice. And key milestones, first it was established in 1997. In 2017, medical forensic services were transferred from Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Justice. And the same year, we created Chamber of Private Forensic Experts. We also, with the help of the World Bank, we started a project for development of these services. We've trained more than 250 experts overseas and online. And also we were able to introduce a number of changes into our legislation. And also we've developed a number of new principles, which then were transformed into the draft law, new draft law, which is currently in the parliament, in the lower chamber in Majlis, under consideration. Why it is important to develop forensic services? Because best judges cannot render best decisions without proper support of forensic experts. The world is developing, many areas of our activities, economy is developing, everything is becoming more and more complex. And for solving disputes, we need adequate forensic service. And in criminal justice, we have an unusual situation, I would say. It is a heritage of the Soviet system, which was mentioned by our ambassador. It is a problem, I would say, that in our courts, mainly forensic reports are done at the request of prosecutors. And barristers, when defending people, they are not always able to get alternative forensic expert reports. And this is the main problem. Why it is happening? Because most of the forensic experts are state forensic experts. I would say only one player in this market, which is a forensic center under the Ministry of Justice. That is why our aim to develop market of forensic services, which would be based on private forensic experts. And here we are following experience of UK. About 10-15 years ago, UK started to move from state forensic service to private forensic service system. As I said, for any reform, you need people. And starting from 2011, 12, we started to send our forensic experts abroad. Currently, 65 forensic experts received training through these specially tailored training programs in King's College and LSE. It is 1 year training program. It is not master degree program, it is internship. First 6 months, our forensic experts with basic English language skills were undergoing English training in the morning, and in the afternoon, they were working with their colleagues, forensic experts in UK. And second 6 months period, they were only undergoing training programs with their colleagues, forensic experts. And here again, nice pictures. Now these people, they were coming back in 2015, 17, 19. Now these people are holding managerial positions in forensic center, not only in the capital of Kazakhstan, but also in the regions. And when we are making reforms, these people are helping to change working culture in forensic services center. And last slide about public services provided by the Ministry of Justice. Here we made our main goal move to IT systems. We rely heavily on IT systems, and I'm proud to say that first million of public services provided online was done by the Ministry of Justice. That was back in 2012. Now we provide 50 types of public services, which is 98% online. number of examples. Real estate sale purchase agreements are registered within 1 day. Registration of legal entities, business legal entities, is done within 1 hour. And 2020 doing business indicators of Kazakhstan, as you see, registering property 24th place, starting a business 22nd place, enforcing contracts 4th place. These are quite good results, and they are achieved thanks to the people who work in the Ministry of Justice. Again, I'm proud to say that out of roughly 300 people working in the central apparatus of the Ministry of Justice, 50 are Western educated and 25 are currently studying abroad. And we have, we actually had many more, but they left Ministry of Justice, now working in private sector and in other state bodies. It was my personal principle not to stop them, because if they leave Ministry of Justice, maybe it's not good for the Ministry of Justice, but it is good for the country, generally for the economy. Because with experience of working in the Ministry of Justice, in civil service, and with Western education, they could give good results and give much more to private sector in comparison to people who have no such experience and no such education. Generally, for the country, it's very good. I will conclude here, and I'm happy to answer all the questions.
Minister, thank you very much indeed. I mean, that was a whirlwind tour of reforms, and it's fascinating to hear about both the qualitative and quantitative achievements that have been undertaken under your tutelage of this sector. So congratulations on that. Before further ado, could I call on Mark Beer to take the floor, and we look forward to hearing his speech, and then we'll come back to questions. Thank you.
With pleasure, and thank you very much indeed, Minister. Thank you, Rupert, and to the British-Kazakh Society. And Ambassador, it's wonderful to see you again, and congratulations on all you're doing for UK-Kazakhstan relations. If I may, I will share my screen and the power of technology. Okay, so Rupert, can you see my screen up there now? Yes, you can. That's
excellent. Excellent.
Wonderful. Well, look, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. My background has been in judicial transformation for well over a decade. I formed part of a new court, the DIFC Court, very similar to the Aifc Court. And over the course of 10 years, that became recognized both as the most technologically advanced court in the world and as one of the top 3 commercial courts. So I know what it is to reform a judicial sector, and that led to my presidency of the International Association for Court Administration, the standard setter for courts, which we brought for the first time in their history to Central Asia to see the remarkable work of the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court of Kazakhstan and the Aifc Court. I've worked with the World Economic Forum on judicial reform, both in their justice and rule of law groups. And as the introduction kindly said, I sit on the International Council of the Supreme Court, but I also advise the UK government on judicial technology and digital transformations, as well as being a visiting fellow at Oxford University and a visiting professor at the Shanghai University for Political Science of Law. So I've done a fair bit when it comes to looking at judicial development. And the slightly facetious title, One Step at a Time, in a sense, is what I'm going to talk about today, because it is, as we heard at the outset, and the introduction spoke of remarkable progress, Ambassador, and that's absolutely right. There is no other country that I know of that has achieved the progress that Kazakhstan has achieved in such a short period of time without affecting its culture. I think the best example perhaps of another country that's done similarly well with a reform program that also started in the 90s is Singapore. And if we look at Singapore today, a modern, vibrant, respected, trusted environment, but if you look back at the 1990s, it was the opposite. It was a pariah state. It was seen to be the worst of Asian judiciaries. And they have embarked on an ambitious reform program, as has Kazakhstan. But it doesn't need to change the culture, because back in the 1990s, Singapore was criticized because you could be in prison for chewing gum, you could be caned for graffiti, there was the death sentence, and you'd be imprisoned by the state without charge for an indefinite period. Those were considered to be very bad things. Singapore today is seen in a very positive light, but you still go to prison. It's still illegal to chew gum. You still get caned for graffiti. They've still got the death sentence, and you can still be imprisoned by the state without charge for an indefinite period. They have not had to change their culture, what they hold to be important values for Singapore, but they have improved their reputation. So it is possible for judicial reform whilst maintaining culture and tradition, and that is exactly what Kazakhstan has done. But the challenge with judicial reform is it's so slow. On average, 14 years to make any significant difference to judiciaries. I mean, the reason is, you know, in a normal business, let's say, you can fire people who don't believe in the strategy. But you can't fire a judge, you can't lower their salary, you can't demote them, they are independent. So the pace of change for judicial reform is normally incredibly slow. And yet what we'll see in this presentation is that in Kazakhstan, it has been incredibly fast. And it's happened over three distinct phases. The first phase from 91 to 2013, what I call the foundational period. The second period from 2013 to 2017, remarkable growth, a really inspirational period under the leadership of Chairman Marmi. And then the period from 2017 to now, another period of really transitional change. The first phase, as I say, it was a foundational phase, and it was a movement away from a judiciary designed to protect the state and the power of the state to a judiciary designed to protect the citizen. And this is a significant shift. It's a tectonic shift in the focus of the judiciary, and it all happened in phase one. Bear in mind, only 27 years ago, only in February 94, did we actually see the separation of powers. Before that date, the judiciary was part of the government, as it is in, for example, China. But in 94, the judiciary became independent. And that's the period in which most constitutional and legislative change was introduced to build a foundation or framework for the development of the judiciary. We then come into phase two of development. This was a real focus on efficiency. We know that in 2015, the 100 concrete steps were announced by the first president. Part of that was development of the rule of law. And what we saw in this period under the leadership of a quite brilliant Chief Justice, Chairman Marmi, who is one of the most remarkable court leaders I've experienced in terms of his ability to implement reforms in such an accelerated pace. What we saw was this focus on citizen centricity. So not only a movement away from power of the state protection to power of the people protection, but then a move again on top of that to citizen centricity, delivering justice to the people how they want. And part of that was a remarkable e-justice program. Now we take video conferencing for granted nowadays. We're on a video conference. But back in 2017, under the leadership of Chairman Marmi, every court in Kazakhstan, that's 1,418 courts, were already operating with video conferencing and audio-visual facilities. 330,000 summonses have been issued electronically, all in 2017. A very, very remarkable period of technological transformation, commitment to the rule of law, and commitment to citizen centricity. And that led to this e-justice project, which was probably one of the first in Central Asia, if not certainly one of the first comprehensive ones in the world, which allowed for judges to access their court files remotely, and allowed, as I say, for 100% of all courtrooms, or all courtrooms, to have access to audio-video facilities. And then we come on to phase 3, which is really looking at the courts of the future. And I set up the Courts of the Future Forum some years ago to look at how courts need to evolve in a world of smart contracts, blockchain-enabled commercial transactions. When planets, when kingdoms are being set up in space, like the Kingdom of Asgardia, what do you do as a court? How do you enforce a court order over a blockchain with 1,000 nodes over 50 countries? So looking to the courts of the future, this under the leadership of Chairman Asanov, another brilliant leader of courts and reformer in courts. And this is very much the era of digitization. And it was Chairman Asanov that announced his philosophy, his strategy in the format of 7 pillars of reform. The first was the judges, getting better judges, judges more able to cope with the needs of the citizens and investors and residents. And what I like about the strategy that they've implemented is a precondition of being a judge is many things, legal knowledge and the like, but also technical knowledge. A judge has to demonstrate technical competency. So having a judge that just happens to be smart, but doesn't know how to use computers, therefore doesn't know how to interact with the court systems, which are so advanced, doesn't wash anymore. And that is a really, not many courts have gone down that route, not least of which because it would eliminate 95% of most judges from being able to take part in the court process. The second area is efficiencies in the court process. The introduction of KPIs. The Kazakhstan court, one of the few in the world to have a project management office dedicated to implementing reforms and change. So often it's left to committees of judges and administrators, but the Kazakhstan success in part is due to a project management office run by dedicated professionals from the private, or previously from the private sector. I focused on fairness and fair trial, independence of the judiciary, removing the authority of what you might call the governing judge to appoint junior judges, which many would argue leads to cronyism. Making sure decisions are clear instead of having, beautifully worded legal documents full of historic references to Latin, Roman, and Greek. Judgments now must be clear, and judges are taught how to deliver clear judgments so that parties know whether they've won or lost. There is that famous story, isn't there, of the judge who gave a sort of 3-hour rendition of the judgment, and at the end of it the defendant said, "So did I win?" And I think we've got to move away from that. We've got to have much clearer judges for the people and delivering judgments that they can understand. The move towards smart technology, Kazakhstan very much is ahead of the game, both in the Aifc Court and in the Supreme Court, in the use of technology. It's really remarkable. Out of a control center in Nur Sultan, the court can make sure that all of the courts around the country are operating efficiently. The judges are turning up on time. That you may not think that judges turn up late, but they do. And of course that creates great frustration amongst the parties who are waiting for them. So just simple things like making sure that the courts run professionally is something that smart technology and smart contracts is doing. Transparency, there aren't many courts in the world on Instagram, I'll tell you that. I don't think Chairman Asanov has yet moved to Snapchat, but he is using platforms to build public trust and confidence, build the reputation of the courts, make the courts more accessible. He's even got hearings on YouTube, I'm told. So it really is forward-looking in terms of increasing transparency of the system. And the last of the 7, and this really is, it sounds so obvious, but not many courts do it, a focus on helping parties settle. That is, a focus on turning business away, a focus on avoiding the hearing, the trial, a focus on helping parties resolve their problems rather than fight their problems. Strategically, judges feel that they're doing themselves out of a job if they put systems in place to help people settle their problems, but actually it's what the public wants. So reconciliation as a pillar is really, really futuristic in thinking. What are the results? Well, the Minister mentioned some of them. On the Global Competitiveness Index, in 2 years, Kazakhstan has risen, its judiciary rather, has risen 8 places, which is remarkable, really unheard of. On the World Justice Project's Rule of Law Index, it's risen 8 places. And as the Minister mentioned, when it comes to the World Bank Ease of Doing Business score, it's 4th in the world in terms of enforcing contracts. Now, that's great. I think as the Ambassador has acknowledged, there's still a long way to go. Kazakhstan itself is 55th in the Global Competitiveness Index, whilst it ranks the judiciary and judicial independence somewhere around 71. So whilst we're seeing the judiciary coming up, whilst we're seeing the system coming up, it's still not at the same level of other elements of government. And I think, if I may, Minister, it's good to claim how much you have defended against international treaty obligations. I think the challenge, though, of building a reputation of not paying treaty obligations, which you may well argue, well, we're using all of the legal tools at our disposal not to pay. The challenge is it makes it difficult for lawyers to advise investors to invest when others have found it extremely difficult to settle their treaty obligations. That said, I know, as you quite rightly pointed out, that part of the problem is not having access to the best lawyers and teams of lawyers capable of helping to resolve these types of disputes. I'm delighted to see James Palmer of Omnia Law Plus on the phone, a firm famous for helping organisations and countries resolve significant and investor-based disputes. James, welcome. And I'm also in a similar vein, helping countries around the world solve their problems. So talent is available to the Minister. I just think it's an important factor for improving the reputation of the country that we get this treaty protection up to speed. We then come on to the AIFC Court, a remarkable institution supported by the Minister, supported by the Chief Justice at the time, Chairman Marmy, an English language common law court. English language because it sits in a financial centre. 80% of the world's financial transactions take place in the English language, so it makes sense in a financial centre to have an English language court. We also have common law. Why common law? Well, if you think about the world's financial centres, New York, London, Singapore, Hong Kong, they're in the main, they're common law. So financial centres tend to operate in common law. Institutions understand common law. They feel comfortable with common law. So the AIFC Court operates using principles of common law. And although the AIFC courts are constitutionally independent, this is important from a UK perspective, because the decision we get from the AIFC court is an independent decision. The judges are from all around the world, many of them from the UK. The court isn't so independent that its philosophy and its ability to enforce its decisions aren't aligned. So it is still subject to the policy of the state from a policy point of view, but the judges are entirely independent. And what that means is we have an enforcement advantage. Not only is it easy to enforce decisions of the English language common law AIFC court in Kazakhstan, and the Minister pointed out the private nature of much of the enforcement mechanism, but we can take judgments from AIFC court around the world, given the wonderful work that the ambassador and others in his team have done in building a network of relationships with countries around the world that will honour judgments from Kazakhstan. So not only does one get the best of English language common law, but one gets a piece of paper at the end of it, which can be converted to cash. And how rarely do businessmen and lawyers ever think to themselves when they sign a contract, if I need to enforce this, could I ever collect? How often do people do deals with, where I used to work, the Middle East, relying on the courts of England and Wales and not thinking that judgments from England and Wales are not enforceable in large part in the Middle East? How often do people rely on arbitration awards and going to arbitration in Paris or Stockholm, not realizing that east of Suez, in large part, arbitrations are not enforceable? Sadly, more often than you'd think. And yet AIFC now provides a credible, safe, professional institution through which justice can be delivered and, as importantly, justice can be enforced. And it gives people a choice. If a person prefers Kazakh language or Russian language, they have a choice to go to the domestic courts. If they prefer English, they have a choice to go to the AIFC courts. If they prefer civil law or common law, they have a choice. If they prefer a civil process versus a common law process, they have a choice. If investors want to access Kazakhstan, they have a choice. If investors want to go beyond Kazakhstan and access Central Asia, one of the most exciting regions in the world economically at the moment, they have a choice. And that, I suppose, is, of all these things that we've heard, a remarkable achievement, not only in transformation of the judicial process, but transformation in the willingness to give people a choice. So in summary, it really is a remarkable journey, an absolutely remarkable journey. I don't think any other country, perhaps running close next to Singapore, I don't think any other country has achieved so much in such a short period of time. And that does go down to the geniuses, including the Minister, who have been behind this transformation strategy, including Chairman Marmi and Chairman Asanov. We see this transition of the judiciary away from state protection and state power towards citizen centricity, digitization, access at the mobile phone. We've seen the adoption of global best practices. When I brought the courts and the judges from all around the world to visit Kazakhstan as part of the International Court Association visit, they were blown away at how Kazakhstan had managed to combine the adoption of best practice and technology whilst maintaining its tradition and cultural values. And Kazakhstan has created now a safe harbour for investors, a safe place to be, if you will, a safe harbour for ships before they go out into some choppy waters of the neighbourhood. And all of that is due to the hard work of the people in the ministry, in the Supreme Court, and in the AIFC. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. That was really a ringing endorsement and an objective endorsement of the great work that the Minister and the Ambassador have been engaged with. This is a huge subject, and I suspect we're going to need a follow-up webinar to deal with all the questions, but we have generated, I mean, I've got 15 or 20 questions in front of me. We're not going to be able to deal with all of those, but as chairman, I thought I might pick out perhaps 3 key questions, and then if each of the panelists could just give a brief response to that. So the first question is, how are relations between UK and Kazakhstan in the justice sphere? Lord Woolf has been much involved in the bilateral justice relationship. Are you happy with your relations with the UK judicial system? Minister, perhaps you would answer that.
Thank you for this question. And this gives me an opportunity to explain what are additional effects we're having from the Aifc Court and Arbitration Center. We are not happy with the situation when investors trust Kazakhstan more with availability of these mechanisms. What is also good that this center and the court require lawyers working to facilitate all the procedures, to provide services to their clients. And these lawyers, when they work here, they not only work in this court and arbitration center, they also work in national courts. And the standard of service they're getting in AIFC, they are expecting in national courts. Generally, it raises the standard for lawyers and for national courts. And that is additional effect of AIFC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark, would you like to add to that?
Well, having built the first International Financial Centre Court and having helped shape the AIFC and the AIFC Court, it's an immense pride that we've built a court not just connected to the UK. I mean, there's a contingent of UK judges. Why? Because when we built the DIFC Court, we went to businesses around the world and we said, if you can't solve your problem at home, where would you go? And overwhelmingly, businesses said, well, if we can't solve it at home, we go to London. So it does seem to me that global commerce is comfortable with London. In fact, I think Kazakhstan ranks #2 in terms of the number of parties in the commercial court in England. So I think, you know, Kazakhstan is comfortable with London. But what AIFC has done is it's brought the caliber of London to AIFC, but it's given perhaps speed, because London is getting a bit clogged up at the moment. It's got speed, and it's got enforcement into a part of the world that the UK doesn't have. So that's why I think the collaboration is so strong. And it's why Kazakhstan sits so proudly on the Standing International Forum of Commercial Courts. And it's AIFC and the domestic system represented there. Why? Because it is now a jurisdiction recognized to have some of the most advanced commercial courts and trusted commercial courts in the world. And in part, that is the network, including the UK courts, which is leading the way in the way that investment and commercial court decisions are being made.
Mark, thank you. Erlan, you've been so much involved with these negotiations, and I know that you're very friendly with Lord Wolfe, who's played a role. Have you got any further comments on that particular question?
I think the proof of the pudding is in eating. AIFC is a young baby. We have to nurture it further. Nothing is imperfect in this life, but I think intention, desire to work together, desire and availability to understand the problems being faced by the AIFC participants is a good indication for others. I saw a question that Kazakhstan has a reputation of not respecting the court decision, arbitration decisions, but I think AIFC is exactly the institution to prove that we are moving away from that culture. And Minister Beketayev can give you the figures of how many disputes judged both in Kazakh courts and in the AIFC court have been granted fair decisions which have been respected and honored. I think one has to have an understanding that AIFC just a baby of 3 years old and needs further nurturing and bringing up. But the future, I think, will be bright if we continue to work together. And since I'm there, I raise my hand. Let me, you will be concluding, Rupert, but let me say very brief comments to Mark. First of all, Mark, I admired your presentation, but most of all, I admired a very wonderful and nice misspelling in your title. A little step, how it's called, your title?
One step at a time.
One step at a time. The misspelling of that one step is absolutely fantastic and nice, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
And to Minister Beketayev, I wanted just to say the part which he didn't hear, that concluding my introductory remarks, I said, Marat, do you hear me now? Minister Beketayev is
Yes.
not hearing me again.
Yes,
you hear me now. So my conclusion was that a job has been done by the legal team in Kazakhstan, our first president. Remarkable achievements have been done, but most importantly, we have to understand that a lot more is to be done, and we wish you every success in your further endeavors to further perfect the legal system in Kazakhstan, bringing it to international standards, indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erlan.
Perhaps I could comment a little bit about number of cases. So far, to my knowledge, in AIFC Court and Arbitration Center, no dispute was brought against the state body or the state, the Republic of Kazakhstan. But we have a special division within our High Court, investment disputes division within High Court, within our national court system. And more than 50% of the decisions were rendered in favor of investors against the Republic of Kazakhstan. And when people are saying that Kazakhstan is not respecting obligations and it's difficult to enforce decisions, I have to counter this argument by saying most of the decisions of arbitration tribunals were rendered in favor of Kazakhstan, more than 90%. How this figure was achieved? Because we settled all the disputes we understood we could lose. And reasonable settlement is a policy of the Republic of Kazakhstan. That is why we were able to achieve this ratio of winning more than 90% of the cases. And those cases which are well known and we are not going to pay, we are not doing this, we are not paying because we strongly believe that fraud was involved. And this is an exemption which proves the rule. We have to respect the law, and that is why we should not pay fraudsters. That is the only reason to fight such decisions. Thank you.
Minister, that's very clear. I think we've got time for one more question, and then I think we really must organize another webinar because it's such a significant topic, this. Despite being the British-Kazakh Society, we've got a lot of questions about the Biden administration. And really, just a brief question, has Kazakhstan engaged with the new Biden administration in terms of justice issues? And what have been the outcomes, if that is the case? Minister.
So far, Kazakhstan has been engaging with all the administrations and quite effectively. I myself personally was in Washington a number of times. All the time I was in Washington, and also when ambassador was posted to Washington, we were meeting people from Department of Justice, from FBI, from the Congress, all the time discussing our cooperation. And I can assure you that this cooperation is quite effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to add to that?
I'm least qualified to comment on Kazakh-US relations. I'll leave that to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Justice.
Erlan, you may have a couple of comments on that.
Administration, we have a very successful relationship. I personally met when I was Ambassador Vice President Biden, and I'm sure that we will continue to have a very enjoyable relationship. One small signal of the warmth of our relationship is the 2 days old congratulation by President Biden to President Tokayev in relation to the arrival of spring and Nowruz festival. I think that's a very good gesture on the part of the new administration of the United States, and this reflects the depth and warmth of our relationship in all aspects, and including in the legal reform and legal matters.
Erlan, thank you very much indeed. Look, it's been a tremendous webinar. We're all incredibly grateful to the panelists. As I say, we must have a follow-up to this because there are a huge amount of questions coming in, and it's obviously a subject area that really fascinates people. And obviously, Kazakhstan is leading the way here internationally. So look, I'm particularly grateful to Roger Holland, Jeffrey Temple, and David Skeels, our directors, who've helped bring this important webinar to fruition. And also a special thanks to our membership secretary, Alijan, who's arranged all the technical side of this. But look, special thanks to the Minister, to Mark Beer, and His Excellency Erlan Idrissov, not only for your insights, but also for answering the questions in such a candid way. Thank you also to all our viewers. Please go to our website where you can see about future meetings, but really grateful thanks from the BKS to all of you. Fascinating webinar, and we must do this again very soon on the legal framework. Thank you so much indeed.